Hello, Professor Randon. My name is Sunny Avzal, and today I'll be talking to you about my beta version from my game board. Now, before I get to the actual gameplay, I will address a few things written on the feedback I got for my midterm. So you asked me, in your feedback, you asked if the dice for my concept, the biased dice, if they're actually biased dice, the ones I purchased. So I want to give some background information about that to give some clarity. Now, when it comes to biased dice, there's different terms that you can use for it. Obviously, I prefer to use biased dice, but you can also call it loaded dice or heavy dice. And they all mean the same thing. You know, it's pretty much saying that the dice is not fair in that certain sides are more likely to come up than others. So that's the whole meaning behind these names. Another thing you brought up is the color of the dice I was using. So I decided to focus mostly on the black and the yellow, and I'll give you some information about these dice for the selection pool when players are deciding their one dice. So these are the black ones, and these 6 are actually all loaded or biased towards the number 6. So if I roll them at the same time, they would most likely land on 6. These yellow ones are more towards, I think, different numbers. So the on eBay where I purchased them, it said that the numbers 2, 7, and 12 would come up more over time. And these are just regular dice. These are completely fair, 1/6 chance for each side. So I will show you, for more background information, I'll show you some of the pages where I purchased these dice. Here are the yellow ones that I bought, trick dice, 1/2 inch flats and shapes, ivory color, 6-1 is over 6 ace. So let's look at the description here. Dice 6 shapes favor 2, 7, and 12. Weak 40 over 1,000 shaved, also known as flats, are dice that are unevenly trimmed, which favor the dice landing on certain numbers. So let's see. With these 6 and 1 sides are the flat sides, and naturally the numbers 6 and 1 will come up the most often. These dice are shaved 40 over 1,000 of an inch, and on the 6-1 side, the favorite numbers 2, 7, and 12, which over time will come up more often than the other numbers and cause the shooter to crap out. So for the black ones, these are character building loaded dice by Caught Below Games. So I'll scroll to the description. These are standard size black 6-sided dice with silver pipes for numbering. They are numbered normally but are weighted, so they are more likely to roll 6. In general, the longer they roll, the more likely they are to land on 6. So that's some background information on the dice that I chose. Obviously, I would prefer more variety, but I did a lot of research and I did not come up with other numbers, so it was hard for me to find loaded dice or biased dice towards the numbers 4, or let's say 3. Like they're more towards 1 and 6, and sometimes 2. It's very tricky to find the exact dice you're looking for, but I spent a lot of money on them, and the ones I got I think worked pretty well. And I think casinos in Las Vegas, they definitely use biased dice, and so because they obviously want to have the upper hand among people that come in and want to gamble. And I actually found some dice on eBay, but those casino dice cost over $190. So those are really out of my price range. But it would be great if I could get them for my board game, but I don't have the funds to. So let's move on to my enhanced board game with extra mechanics. So you told me on my feedback, that I should focus on perhaps working on the flow movement. Let's see. The board will need the movement flow on it to help players. Yeah. So that's why I enlarged it. It's I took the picture to FedEx, and they enlarged it for me and laminated it for me. So now it looks more like a real board game, and it's this size, so it allows many players to play at once. I apologize for any glares on the board. That's because of the lights at the top. I apologize for that. So I will pause quickly and then move towards gameplay and my added mechanics. Hey, Professor Randon, I will now talk about my enhanced gameplay along with added mechanics. So let's start out by making it clear that the board goes in a curvy path. So you will start here and then you will follow this path this way. So that is the path, so on and so forth, until all the way to square 100. So there are still 100 squares on my game board. So I've not changed that. But so I will talk to you about the added mechanics first. So let's start with these three guys. 1, 2, 3. So these squares will focus on drawing cards. So obviously the point of the game is to avoid landing on square 100. So obviously players want to try to stay on the lower half of the board as much as possible. So these three squares have been placed in order to stop the players, or it might help them, might hurt them, depends on what happens. So for square 11, you land on this one and it will actually take you forward. So you draw a card from the deck, and depending on the number that you draw, it will move you forward. Unless you draw a joker. Draw a joker and it will actually take you back to square 1, which is a good thing. Square 50, you land on that one. It will depend on the color of the card you draw. So if you draw a black card, it has a black number, it will move you backwards. Draw a red card, it will move you forward, a bad thing. So the last square, square 90, this is obviously close to danger zone. You land on square 100 and you're out. So this is on square 90. So you land on this, and this will essentially give you another chance at life, hopefully. You land on it and it will take you backwards depending on the card you draw. Does not matter what color. So you draw a 9, it will move you back 9 spaces. The good thing about moving backwards is that you can again land on the card spot and essentially delay your demise. Go past it and you're pretty much go past square 90 and you're essentially on borrowed time to be eliminated. You draw a joker on the square, it will actually take you immediately to square 100 for an instant loss. So that explains those three squares. So let's move on to the other squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They look like steroid injections. These are sacrificing squares. So in the midterm, I explained that obviously 2 players. I'll give a 2-player demonstration. If 2 players are playing, they will obviously make a prediction, roll the 2 dice, and then based on what the 2 dice add up to, they will subtract it from their prediction. So let's say you get a score of 2, and that score of 2 lands you on one of the sacrificing squares. So now you have the option. You can either move 2 forward or 2 back. That's your decision. But here comes the sacrificing part. Your opponent will get double that amount. So if you go 2 spaces forward, your opponent will go 4 spaces forward. You go 2 spaces back, your opponent will go 2 spaces back. So it's essentially, what is the best move to get my opponent eliminated? You may think that moving your player 4 spaces forward is a good thing, but you never know. Moving them 4 spaces forward might put them on a sacrificing square, which gives them the upper hand to make the next move. So it really depends on where your opponent is on the board, where you are, and it's now gonna essentially you're gonna have to think forward now. You know, will my move cause damage to me in the long run? So you really have to think ahead and see where your opponent will possibly land. So I will now pause and then collect myself for the next explanation.